Hello, my name is Mitch Norris. In this video, I want to share my learning journey through this course and how it completely reshaped my understanding of what a desert actually is. Before taking this class, I had a pretty simple mental image of deserts, flat, dry, empty, but every module challenged that idea. And by the end, I realized that the Sonoran Desert isn't just a landscape, it's a living system shaped by climate, geology, evolution, water, and human communities working together. And just a little bit about me. I'm a film major, so of course I decided to do a video rather than any other format. And the way that this applies personally to me is that there are a lot of scripts that I write that feature desert scenes. Star Wars, one of my favorite films, features a desert. And so I've always been interested in shooting in a desert. I think that would be really fun. So even though I'm not a science major or anything like that, I found this class really interesting and really well put together, really informative. So I'm going to go over some of the things that I learned from different modules. From Module 1, one of my biggest early takeaways was that deserts aren't defined by heat. Now, I knew this already. Of course, I knew about like the Gobi Desert and other deserts that aren't necessarily hot, but that was my mental image primarily of the desert. They're not defined by heat, they're defined by aridity. Places where more water evaporates then falls as rain. And that means a desert can be scorching hot or it can be freezing cold. The unifying factor is not heat, it's the arid nature of the landscape. It's the lack of moisture, not temperature. And so that's something that I feel like I knew in the back of my head, but was really solidified as soon as I started this class. Something that stuck with me, a little critter that stuck with me through this whole thing, was the kangaroo rat. I just thought it was fascinating. That was one of the first animals that I learned about in our lab work. And how its kidneys conserve every drop of moisture. It's crystalline urine, which is gross but kind of fascinating. And then, of course, plants like the saguaro that store enormous amounts of water. And it really helped me appreciate just how specialized life in this region really is, and also how fragile it is in this region. Module 2, what really stood out to me was the focus on the geological foundation of the desert. Millions of years of the crustal stretching that form the valleys and the mountain ranges that shape the landscape of the Sonoran Desert. I've always been fascinated by geology. I took a geology class many moons ago. I'm a returning college student. I'm an older college student. But I remember I took a geology class my first time around. And so just engaging with how the tectonic plates and the tectonic forces pulled the crust apart was really interesting to me. How volcanic activity also played a huge role. And how the eruptions deposited ash that enriched desert soils with minerals, making them fertile, and how mountain uplift continues to redistribute those minerals, and how it creates different vegetation zones at different elevations. That was fascinating to me. It was very eye-opening to see how erosion and tectonics all work together to create this fascinating habitat. And then also in Module 3, I thought the Sky Islands were really cool. I had never learned about those, and being a Zelda fan, I also find the name Sky Islands to be really cool. They were one of my favorite topics in the whole course. Of course, these are the mountain ranges that rise out of the desert floor like islands in the sky. And at the base, you have desert scrub, but if you climb higher, the environment transforms into woodlands, and at the highest elevation, forests. And each elevation zone species uniquely adapted to that microhabitat. Fascinating stuff. And stuff that exists nowhere else. To me, the Sky Islands show how geology and elevation creates those pockets of biodiversity, almost like multiple ecosystems stacked in one place. In Module 4, we learned about climate. And another big takeaway for me was understanding how water moves through this landscape. Huge, huge part of the landscape there. And the fault zones and sediment basins that form the aquifers that store precious groundwater. These systems are critical for both human and wildlife communities. What concerns me is how climate change is stressing these aquifers. And it's such a, like I said, mentioned earlier, it's such a fragile ecosystem that it started to really concern me as I went on through this class about just how much climate change is affecting the climate there, or the atmosphere there, rather. The Sonoran's 2 rainy seasons, something else that I thought was really interesting that helps support life. They can't fully offset the water challenges created by a changing climate. And that module made me understand how urgently water conservation and sustainable management are needed. And then lastly, what I wanted to talk about, what stuck with me, is where I realized how complex the desert really is. Because in the first module, I was introduced to all these critters and plants, and I was like, oh, okay. But then it just kept compounding, and I learned all the relationships between these animals and the plants, and how really unique life is there in the Sonoran Desert. It makes me actually want to visit there soon. I'm from Louisiana, so there's no desert around here, but I would really like to go and visit, especially after taking this class. To me, that showed how social behavior can be shaped by environmental pressures, such as the Harris's hawk and their social behavior of hunting, how they hunt together in a group. I thought was very interesting. We also learned about allelopathy, plants like the creosote that release chemicals that suppress their competitors. The desert mistletoe, which taps into its host for nutrients. Creepy. Even mathematical patterns, which I wanted to bring up, like the Fibonacci sequence. And the Fibonacci sequence, that's something really cool for me to talk about. Like I said, I'm a film major, so I learned about the Fibonacci sequence early on in my photography classes and things like that. And so it's really interesting to see how that sequence appears in nature for these specific reasons. And what really changed my perspective was learning about the human role in all of this. Human communities help shape the desert. The native communities there and how they play a role in that environment is really fascinating stuff. They shape the desert through land use, culture, research, conservation, and legislation, like the local governments there and all of the efforts that they are trying to do to conserve this marvelous place on Earth. And sometimes we cause harm, but we also play an essential role in protecting these ecosystems, so it encouraged me to spread the word. It reminded me that conservation isn't just scientific, it's collaborative, and we all take part in it. What surprised me most is just how interconnected everything is. It literally would be impossible for the Sonoran Desert to exist without all this cooperation from different species, and I just found that really, really fascinating. I expected to learn about plants and animals, but I didn't expect all this stuff about geology and climate and culture. That was a big surprise for me. And social systems to be all part of the same class. I was especially surprised with the complexity of the Sky Islands and the cooperative behavior of like the Harris hawks and the idea that a desert can have 2 growing seasons. And I never thought I'd be so interested in groundwater. But here we are. In understanding the aquifers has made me see that the desert complexity in a totally new way. Moving forward, I think that I'm going to carry this knowledge with me forever as I think about sustainability, land use. It gives me a new appreciation for wildlife, especially in an ecosystem so different from the one that I find myself in here in Louisiana. And you know, whether it's supporting policies or making informed choices about my water usage or just appreciating the landscapes, this course helped me see the desert as a dynamic, interconnected system. It strengthened my interest in ecology and gave me a deeper respect for how resilient and how vulnerable desert ecosystems really, really are. And in conclusion, thanks for watching. This course really changed the way that I see deserts. And I hope this video helps share a little bit of what I learned along the way. It's been fascinating. I didn't know what to expect when I started this class, but I'm so thankful for it, and I'm glad that I got to be a part of it because I learned so much.